Just want to welcome everybody for coming out this evening, just taking some time out of your busy schedule. I'm Paul Hutton, President of Hutton Wealth Management, and tonight I've got David Childers, CPA from Shallow Water, Texas, which is just right outside of Lubbock. And then I've got my good friend, my best friend, Chad Allman here, who is a good attorney here, my personal attorney, and practices in estate planning, criminal, and
all kinds of things.
All kinds of things. Tonight we wanted to talk a little bit about, in our first community conversation here, we wanted to talk about how the investment world and the tax world and the legal world kind of collide, and how all three of these industries can work better to serve all and each one of our clients here. And just want to provide you with some updated information. I'm just going to kind of sit back and listen to these gentlemen visit here, but I'll give you some input from my side and explain to you how I work with both of these gentlemen on a regular basis in my industry, and how they are that do you well if you don't have a good CPA or attorney to visit with them or somebody like them that can help you. As a financial planner and a wealth manager, I deal on a regular basis with people's investments, and so I have the opportunity to work with their tax situation, because we're always looking at how things can affect you if we buy or sell, things like that. And then we're always looking at how we're going to pass our estate on to our children and grandchildren and those that we love. So this is where David and Chad play a really important part in the lives of all of our clients and everybody that's out there. So I know David has some things that he wants to share with all of you. And then at the end of the presentation, and of course, Chad's going to share some things as well. At the end of the presentation, we'll do a brief Q&A. And if you have some very specific things that you want to talk about, then by all means, Melissa will be getting in touch with everybody, and we want to make sure that your questions are answered. Some of them being more detailed may have to be answered offline, and these gentlemen would be more than happy to visit with you one-on-one and help you out as we can. So with that being said, David, I want to kind of turn it over to you, sir. And I know that you've got some real important information with regards to some things that are taking place in the market right now regarding tax law changes and the PPP program and filings and all of that, things like that. So I want to turn it over to you, sir, and let you take it and go from there.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad to meet everyone. I hope we can be a part of a solution for you. The first thing that's on everybody's mind is the new July 15th tax deadline. They did that to extend everything. They really didn't do me any favors. April 15th, we have an automatic 6-month extension to October 15th anyway. They did put the payment line or payment time off to July the 15th, which has helped. But now if we cannot file by July the 15th, you will get an extension from July 15th, still October the 15th. But the payment extension was the most important aspect that's going to help everybody if you owe. One major problem that's going on is the IRS has not processed any paper returns from about March 1st. There have been no telephone answering services. The IRS has shut off their fax machines. We have been trying to fax power of attorney forms and S-Corp election forms to the IRS since the middle of March, and all we get is no answer. Not busy signals, but no answer. So if you've had someone that's filed an amended return or any form like that, it's waiting on somebody's desk till they come back to work. Theoretically, we've heard they're supposed to come back to work sometime this week. The one major thing that's going to help me as a tax preparer is that we can start filing amended returns sometime later in the summer. We have never been able to e-file the amended returns. We always had to do them by paper, and we always had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for them to process them and do them. Now we can e-file them like like we do a normal return, they should receive them. We should get a confirmation in a less than 24 hours, and they should be worked up within a week or two instead of months or two. And this is going to help a lot because I historically file a lot of amended returns because we picked up clients that were filed somewhere else than their errors, or from we have clients that are receiving tax documents after they filed their original returns. In 18, we had several extender laws that were killed, and then they retroactively brought them back. And we had filed probably 75 returns by the time that come around. We ended up filing about 25 amended returns. And for everybody else to know, though, that from 2009 until about the middle of last year, for about 10 years, the IRS budget was never increased for technology or for personnel. Everybody that's ever dealt with them know that the waiting times got longer and longer. But in the fall of 19, the new IRS budget was increased and for technology. So the plan was 1,000 new agents were scheduled to be hired in the last quarter of 19. And there's going to be supposed to be another 1,000 agents were hired in 2020. I do not know, or I have not heard what the results of the virus pandemic has had on that, but I'm sure that they're there. One major thing that Paul alluded to is that the payroll protection plan law that passed back in the 1st of April and people took advantage of, and they run out of money and then they come back with some more money. We've been kind of hamstrung with a bunch of the provisions of that because of the time frames and the things that had to be done, and people not coming back to work, and people trying to get people to come back to work from the unemployment and this and that. Last week, the House of Representatives passed a bill with significant changes for the payroll protection plan. The major provisions were they extended the payroll covered period from 8 weeks to 24, which is tremendous. That's a 200% increase. They're also going to allow 5 years of repayment of any unforgiven portions instead of the first 2 years like they were doing. The original split was to be at least 75% of the loan had to be spent for payroll, and that's gross payroll, not payroll taxes, anything else. Payroll, cash payroll. The other 25% could be spent on utilities, mortgage interest, or the rent. Well, now that has been increased from 75-25 to a 60-40. This will help a lot of people who have had trouble with people getting them back. The House passed this bill last week, 417-1. And when the Senate came back into session this week on Monday, they took this bill up, believe it or not, pretty much from the House, and it was passed yesterday afternoon unanimously by the Senate, and it's now on its way to President Trump for signature. And he's indicated his support for the last 2 or 3 weeks that he would sign this. So for people that have the PPP loans, this is going to be very significant. I have 2 PPP loans, one for my firm and one for another business I'm a partner in. And my 8-week period was up in about 2 weeks. It's going to be tremendous for that. I want everybody to know that the record keeping for this, for the SBA, is extremely strict. They are going to hold you up to hold those records for 6 years, and they are subject for review from SBA at any time, at anything. Another rumor that's being kicked around in Congress that will be effective to a lot of people with the PPP loans is there's some movement from several senators to try to get the loans. If you have less than $100,000 or $150,000 loan, if you do any part of trying to get them, they're trying to make them be an automatic forgiveness. And if that goes through, that'll help a lot. The major hickey that Congress is going to try to fix, and it's being kicked around also, is about 2.5 weeks ago, the IRS sent out a revenue procedure that said if you've got a PPP loan and it was forgiven, that the expenses that you paid with that PPP loan, labor, rent, utilities, you could not deduct those on your tax return. And everybody from the American Society of CPAs to the Small Business Associations, everybody is petitioning Congress to change that, because they don't believe that that was Congress' intention. The intention was to stimulate the business. And if they don't allow you to deduct it, then you haven't been stimulated. All you've got is a little lump, so it's going to increase your tax bill. Other than that, that's about all I have for that for right now.
Okay, well, thank you, David. I appreciate it very much, sir. I've got some other questions I'm going to come back and circle back around on and touch bases with you here in just a minute. But now I'd like to have Chad do some discussion with regards to estate planning, and he wants to talk to you about doing some wills, what that process looks like. And please understand, Paul Hutton is not allowed to give tax or legal advice. It's not that I don't understand the topics, but I have to be very careful when we start getting into what I call the tall grass. I really need to have these experts in front of me here to help me walk through them, because they truly are the ones that they're trained in this area, just like I'm trained in the finances area. So it's very important, and they're going to share some great ideas with you. Just talk about some general topics. And like I said, Chad's not going to get real specific, and neither will David, about a specific situation here, but we want to give you some basic information. And if there's something that you'd like to catch up on afterwards, they'd be more than happy to visit with you offline about your personal and unique situation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
Well, I hope everybody's having a good evening so far. Paul asked me to come in and discuss, the topic of wills and why people would need them. Also, powers of attorney. And I will tell you that I often find that when people come into my office, they actually get both of them kind of confused. They don't realize the time frame where each one of them becomes important. And so the first thing I have to do a lot of times is let them know that when you're discussing powers of attorneys or powers of attorney, those are actually documents that are only effective while people are alive, okay? Mm-hmm. A will does not become effective until after someone has passed away. And at the time of their passing, in fact, those powers of attorney cease or terminate, okay? So a lot of times we start off and we have people come in and we like to go through and they say, what is a will? Why do we need one? And I always tell them, there's an official definition, and you'll see that on your screen there. A will is a written document by which a person directs his or her estate to be distributed upon their death. Now that sounds really technical. I'm just no country boy from West Texas, and so I like to break it down and say, listen, everyday language, a will is simply nothing more than the express wishes, choices, and desires of a person and what they want done with their property after they die. Okay? Some of the common questions are, what did this person want to do with their property? Who do they want to give it to? Why did they leave certain people out of the will? And then, believe it or not, there's always those people that come out of the woodwork that you haven't talked to in 25 or 30 years, but they've heard that a family member has passed away and they think they have money. And so all of a sudden you're sitting there going, who are you and how are you related to me?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are some of those questions that come forth. But to elaborate a little further, and I will say there are a couple of slides there that you're going to notice that are entitled terms associated with the will. I'm not going to get into those tonight really in depth. I put that up more for an educational purpose to where you can take a look at it, read through those definitions. It gives you a better understanding when you hear certain terms of legalese. You go in and talk to an attorney uses these words and you're going, man, what the heck does that mean? Mm-hmm. So I put that up there to where you can just take a look at it and get an idea. And when you do sit down with me or some other attorney, you have an understanding of those terms that they're referring to during that conversation. Moving a little further on, why do we need a will? Okay, well, here's why. One of the questions or one of the things that we often run into is that people will come into the office and say, well, I don't really think I need a will. Why would I need that? Everything's going to go to my spouse or my significant other. Well, I've got to tell you, that's an assumption. That is not always the case. There are contingencies, that determine how property will actually pass if you die without a will. For example, if you've been married more than once and you have children from multiple marriages, from more than one marriage, then you have certain things that you have to take into consideration with regard to distribution of that property. Mm-hmm. Certain rules come into effect that you have to abide by, with the code, according to the Texas legislature. Mm-hmm. Something else, people oftentimes will have a parent or a family member pass away and they inherit property from that person. Well, a lot of people think, hey, we're married, so that makes that property both of ours. Well, that's not true. When that property is given to that one person, that is actually considered separate property, okay? And it only belongs to that one person, mm-hmm. Okay? So the main question, why do I need a will? Mm-hmm. I will tell you this, it helps to, when a person passes away and they go through the probate process, if you don't have a will, it can make the process a lot more expensive and a lot more complicated.
Chad, can you tell the viewers out there what is probate? What is that? People hear that word all the time. So these are the big words that I hear from my clients. I say, will, you've already explained what a will is. Mm-hmm. You've explained why they need a will. What does probate mean?
Well, and again, I believe that I put the technical definition on some of those slides that we went past a minute ago, so you can get that technical definition. But in layman's terms, I always tell people when they come into my office, they present a will to me and they say, listen, Dad or Mom or my brother named me as the executor in that will. Now, the executor is the person named that the decedent wants to have take care of their final business. Okay. And so to be able to, let's say for instance, you own a home, mm-hmm. Okay, and that house, you're wanting that house to go to your 3 children. Okay. Well, just like when you go buy a house, you have a deed, right? Yes, sir. Well, in the legal sense that when someone passes away, even though they're not physically there anymore, their estate still owns that home. Okay. And to be able to pass title from that estate to the children, you have to go through the legal process, and it's called probate. Okay. What probate does, I liken it to this: you can have a fan sitting over in the corner of the room, and it's got a plug on it. Okay. And you know that fan will work, but it doesn't work unless you plug it into the outlet. Yeah. And what's that outlet? That outlet is the power. Mm-hmm. Well, in the probate process, you know that you have a will and you know what the person wanted in that will, but it doesn't become effective until you get the power or authority to be able to execute the terms of that will. And the way that authority comes is that you have to apply or make an application to the court
Okay.
and get permission from the court, and they have to approve the validity of that will.
Okay.
And when they do that, and they say, okay, here's an order, we think this is good, and they say this qualifies, and once the judge signs that order, now the executor has the power or the authority to now carry through the wishes of the person that wrote the will.
So that'd be the same thing as if the person were actually there doing the business.
Absolutely. Yes.
Gives them the same authority.
They're
They
doing it
They
on-
can't go outside of the will,
They
but they
cannot.
can execute that to the letter of the law,
Absolutely.
which is real important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well, so what else did you have?
well, some of the things, some other questions that might arise is you see on your screen there, can I just handwrite a will? That's what we term as a holographic will. Okay. The holographic wills historically were very popular back in the day, when people lived out on the frontier or they couldn't afford an attorney or things of that nature. Can you still write a holographic will? Yes. Would I, as an attorney, advise you to do that? Probably not. And the reason why is because, as you see there on the screen, handwritten wills are usually not executed properly. There are certain requirements that the statutes say that we have to have done to make a will valid. Okay. A lot of times the property distribution, as you see, is not clear. The wording is not right, and it leads to a lot of confusion and everything. And so, and you notice that last deal, they're most probably not because the will's not valid, but they arise from how the will was constructed. And when something's not done right, it brings a lot of confusion, and when you get a lot of confusion and lack clarity in the wishes of a person, all of a sudden you're doing a guessing game.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of a sudden, you may have the brother fighting with the sister. That's not what mom meant by that. And now you've got a contested situation. And anytime you go into a contested or litigious situation, that's going to make it a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
let me see.
What about online wills or forms? And I know you and I have talked about this a lot. Go to LegalZoom, or oops, I should have said that. But there's a lot of online places that you can go and get these types of things. But a lot of people, because they don't have your background, may do some things that can wind up hurting them, right?
Well, absolutely, and I don't want to take umbrage with any particular company. I mean, everybody's out there trying to do their thing, but I don't know. I like face-to-face contact with people. I think that when you're dealing with somebody's life, their assets and everything, I like to know them on a personal level.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens a lot of times when you deal with form wills and things like that, they may not be written. That thing that you buy at one of the local office supply stores or something like that may not be specifically, worded for Texas. Okay. If you're here in the state of Texas, okay, it may not have specific language that you need. Okay. So I always tell people, listen, before you talk yourself out of going and talking to an attorney because you're afraid it's going to cost an arm and a leg, I can promise you this, and I've seen the situations and dealt with them myself, that those that try to cheap out on the front end because they think it's going to cost them less money end up paying more on the back end because it wasn't done properly. Yeah. So I always encourage people, at least sit down with an attorney first and get an idea of what you're doing.
Well, if anybody's familiar with the famous Texas firefighter Red Adair, he said, if you think hiring an expert is expensive, hire an amateur, because you're going to have to come back and fix what they already did.
Absolutely.
And here's somebody that dealt with this when we're talking about during Desert Storm and things like that. They called him an expert, and he made good money doing it because he was good at what he did.
Absolutely.
So this is the reason why I always tell people, if you don't have a good relationship with a CPA or an attorney, get one. If you need help, I'd be happy to refer you. There's a lot of different ones depending upon your area, what you like, and things like that, to help in those areas, because this is what they're here to do.
And I'll tell you this too. There have been several times I've had people come in and they they didn't have the finances, but they were deathly sick. They knew that their time was short. And, my mindset is that, I would rather make sure that you have things in order.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not always, it's not about money. Okay. Yeah, we have to pay our bills and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's that time that you spend with that person. You see their need, and you try to meet that need when you can, so.
Yeah.
Let's see what else here. So you'll notice the next slide is talking about powers of attorney and why do you need them. Now, a minute ago, I mentioned to you that these are, living documents. These are documents that are effective while you're alive.
Yeah.
A power of attorney is simply just a document that grants someone authority to act on your behalf.
Yeah.
Okay, if you become incapacitated or to where, if you're in a coma or something like that and you can't make decisions, we refer to those a lot of times as disability planning documents, okay? And again, they're effective only while you're alive. Now, and I don't want to rush through this too quickly, but two of the most commonly used powers of attorney that we have are called statutory durable powers of attorney, which is the financial power of attorney. Okay, what this does is that it in effect allows your agent while you're incapacitated to pay your bills, to take care of your financial your financial responsibilities, because you're either, like I said, you're out of it, you're in a hospital. You may not even be able to physically do so. It allows them to help you. The other one is called a medical power of attorney. And again, if you become incompetent or incapacitated in your hospital, this allows your agent to make healthcare decisions on your behalf. Now, one thing I want to really press here is that when you're picking somebody to be your agent, you don't want to be willy-nilly about that. You really want to put some thought into who do you trust?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm myself personally, I don't want to get a medical power of attorney to somebody that I know is going to just pull the plug because they don't want to mess with me. I want to know that somebody is going to take some pure thought and have my best interest at heart. So typically that's going to involve a family member or a friend. So.
And I know in my industry, I work with the general, what you call the statutory, on a regular basis. So clients that have accounts that may not have beneficiary designations. Now, they've gotten better where they have what is called transfer on death forms and things like that, where assets can be transferred over. But in the event that somebody becomes incapacitated through like a medical emergency or an accident or something like that, that transfer on death form is not going to do a whole lot of good in that particular situation. And I can say in my personal experience, when my dad passed away, and close to 8 years ago, he had the statutory general durable power of attorney, which allowed me to help my mother work through some financial affairs while my dad was still living. And of course, he had the medical.
Absolutely.
And those are very vital things to have. If I have a client that has an account and it's separate assets or that's doesn't have one of the spouses on it, by law, the spouse doesn't have any control over those assets unless we have a statutory general durable power of attorney in place.
Absolutely.
And it helps us help you guys a whole lot better when we're able to do this. So I'm sitting down with a client for the first time and things like that. I'm going through and asking questions like, have you done your will? Yes or no. And if you haven't, that's fine. I'm just trying to find out, because we're here to make sure that we're looking for any chinks in your armor to make sure that legally you're taken care of.
Absolutely.
And tax-wise you're taken care of. And this is what Chad's really, really good at doing and can help you out with that.
I think there's a few of the things I'd just like to briefly mention, some additional disability planning documents. One of them, I'm just going to give you the kind of the Cliff Notes, what we call it. It's called a directive to physicians, okay? Otherwise known as an advance directive or a living will. this particular document takes care of situations when people are terminal, if they have a terminal condition, which is typically defined as if you're expected to pass within 6 months, okay, or an irreversible condition, and they don't know the time frame on it, but typically they know that it's not long. And when we sit down with people, and this is probably the hardest document that they have to make a decision on, and a lot of times if they're not sure, we don't press them. We say, you think about it, and if you're not comfortable making that decision, then don't fill that out.
Yeah.
But what it does, it says, hey, the two options that it gives you a lot of times is, hey, keep me comfortable, keep me fed and watered, but let me die as naturally as possible. The other option is, keep me hooked up to every machine possible and try to keep me alive. And I will tell you, the majority of the time, I would say probably 99% of the time, our clients end up picking that option that says, listen, I don't want to be hooked up to everything, okay? Let me go naturally. Now, you see that next document there. I'm not even going to tell you the whole deal there. I'm just going to call it the HIPAA release. Okay. And what this does, the HIPAA release, it serves in conjunction with your medical power of attorney and things like that. And what it does, it allows your doctors and healthcare providers to speak to the agent that you have listed as your medical power of attorney, okay, to where they can make good quality decisions based on your behalf. And then lastly, again, we have a long one there, but we call that the Declaration of Guardian, declaration of guardian if need arises, okay? And basically what that is, it's a preventative measure. And I will tell you that there has been a trend in the courts where they're trying to get away from guardianships as much as possible because guardianships can get expensive.
Sure.
Okay. And in a time when people are, may not have the resources and everything, the court is wanting to push what's called a lesser restrictive alternative. Such as your powers of attorney and things like that. But sometimes there is a need for guardianship, and what that does is that by having this declaration before need arises, this prevents people coming out from nowhere, coming out of the woodwork. Historically, there were people that could just go to the court at any time and say, hey, I need to get a guardianship over this person, and the court would grant it. This prevents people that you may not have anything in common with, or you may be estranged from, anything like that, from being able to come in and get control over your person, your body, and the decisions about your body, or over your property, your money, things of that nature. So that's why when you're thinking about these type of documents, these are the things that you need to be considering.
Yeah.
Okay.
And pretty serious. Now, this is not something that you want to go to the store down the street and try to dig out these documents. You really need to have somebody that has experience in this area, has dealt with it. And I know Chad and David both. As I said, I've been working with David for over 20 years, and I've been working with Chad for 14 years?
14, 15 years.
14, 15 years. So long time, good track records. Trust these men. Is there another slide here?
I think
that's about it.
I think that's it.
Okay. So here's a little information about Chad, where he came from, Tarleton, Oklahoma City University of Law. Both these gentlemen are very men of integrity, and I know that like I said, I've been working for a long period of time. Again, I want to kind of come back, and I'm going to ask David here a couple questions here in just a minute. But again, one thing I want to emphasize with all of you, if we have not gone through these things with you, asking you questions like, when was the last time you've had your wills done? When was the last time you've had your directives to physicians looked at, your powers of attorney, all of these things that Chad just went through? If we haven't asked you those questions, we'd love to make sure that we have gone through those. This is a checklist that we're trying to go through. And I know that me personally, if any of y'all know me very well, you know I like to chat, and chat can turn into the whole conversation. And I didn't spend as much time talking about business because we spend more time talking about grandkids and things like that. But these are all things that we try to go through, make sure that we're covering each one of these things. And then one of the things that I deal with, especially with people that are getting ready to retire, is do you have a good CPA that you trust and you know it's going to have your back? And I know that, like I said, David's my personal CPA, and I've worked with him for over 20 years. And I do encourage people, if you don't have a good relationship, these are situations, especially with the new tax law changes and things like that, where it pays to work with an expert. Because, as I said earlier, Red Adair said, you think that working with an expert's expensive, try hiring a novice in that area, because it can really, really add up very quickly. And I know in the tax world as well. So, David, can you tell us, we know that there has been some recent tax law changes that came out in December of last year regarding the required minimum distributions. I don't know if you're as familiar with the stretch IRA and what they did with the 10-year rule versus the lifetime rule. Do you have any insight that you'd like to share with everybody out there with regards to that?
Not specifically about that, but there is one thing I would like to mention. That's this current situation of the world is this pandemic. I want to make sure that people are hearing rumors, and we've had clients have called and asked, I hear I can take money out of my IRA now.
Yes.
I have to do some taxes, and the 59 and a half, under 59 and a half penalty doesn't apply and whatever. But the people that are pushing this stuff, what they're not telling you is that if you take money out of your IRA right now, you have to pay it back within 3 years, or you do pay tax on it.
Okay. Okay.
It's I forgot what the term is that they use, but if you take money out of your IRA right now for any reason, if you're under 59 and a half, there's no 10% penalty now. But if you read the fine print, and I've had a client call me, I guess, last week about this, and we looked it up, you have to pay it back within 3 years.
Okay.
The part that you don't pay back is taxable.
Okay. And now does the 10% penalty also apply if you go past the 3 years and you're under 59 and a half?
I haven't seen any blurbs about that. I didn't research into it, but I would think so, because the IRS has taken a severe. Everybody always says, "Well, that's not fair." Whatever. The IRS is not here to be fair. They're here to revenue for the United States government. So,
Exactly.
and the problem is they've showed that 3 weeks ago when they came in and said, okay, all of the money that you paid out with forgiven loans, you don't get to deduct it because you're double dipping. And even though Congress said we want to stimulate the economy, okay, stimulate it, but then punish us on the other end. So they're taking a hard line on this, and it's, and like I said, and then it's really hard right now because of what's going on with, you can't get a hold of anybody. I mean, they've turned the fax machines off. We don't get a busy signal. We get no answer.
Wow. So, David, prior to the 3-year rule, it was 60 days. So you could take money out of your IRA and put it back. As long as you put it back within 60 days, and you didn't have to pay taxes or penalty. Now that you're saying that that's moved to 3 years, and most likely the federal government, like you said, they're not going to cut slack if they don't have to. I mean, right now, and I just looked at the national debt before we started this presentation, we're sitting at $25.7 trillion. And that number has grown from about 24 trillion since about the first part of March. We're seeing these numbers go up significantly. So the federal government is looking for ways to raise capital because they need it to pay for all of their individual pet projects, whether it be the arts or whatever their pet project is. They want to give it away to foreign countries.
Running out of ink.
The CARES Act that was enacted in March that everybody got the stimulus payment from, I think the last number was about 3.7 trillion for do that. And
Yeah.
then we're getting all sorts of questions to us. Are they going to do another one?
Yeah. Well, you're
Well,
saying 24 weeks that they're going to extend this thing from 8 weeks. I mean, that's pretty significant right there. And with unemployment numbers being at 40 million people unemployed right now, unemployment numbers came out today. I think there were 1.8 new people that came on unemployment numbers, and they're saying continuing claims were 21 million people. So we've seen our workforce shrink from 150 million down to about 115, 120 million people. Wow. And it's
happening locally, and I see blurbs from the services and people all around. You can't get anybody to come back to work because they're making more money on unemployment than they are on what they were making, and that's part of this new legislation that the House. If you get documentation that you're trying to revamp your workforce and trying to get Joe Blow to come back to work because he's been laid off, if he won't come back because he's making more on unemployment than he is on the deal, if you get him to sign off, says, I don't want to come back, or I can't come back, or I'm afraid to come back, then you don't have to count him in your calculation that's part of your forgiveness deal. So it's going to be tough. We're seeing it so affected here in West Texas so much that we see, but in the bigger towns and whatever, it's a mess.
Yeah, David, a couple other things here. Here's a question to Chad real quick, and well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna hold the Q&A to the end here. So we've got some things here that we'll come back to. So if you've got some questions that you want to ask these guys, well, we've got them here for probably about the next 10 or 15 minutes. There is a chat button and where it says Q&A. It looks like two little bubbles. Yeah, so there's a Q&A. So which one do they need to use, Melissa?
Either one is fine. Okay. It's coming up, but
either one.
The Q&A will be better.
Okay, so use
the chat for you now.
Huh?
There's a question for Chad on the chat now.
Yeah, we'll get to those here in just a minute. I want to go back over a couple things here, and I think that David, and this is more on the tax side here, December 19th, 2019, December 20th, 2019, we had some tax law changes with regards to IRAs, and these were pretty significant changes that took place, and they're going to affect everybody that has an IRA. And the first one is that they took the required minimum distribution law, which stated that you had to start taking your required minimum distributions at age 70 and a half, and then they moved them to age 72. Now, understand, this new change is effective for everybody that's getting ready to start taking the required minimum distributions. If you've already started taking your required minimum distributions, then you're going to need to continue. But that being said, with everything that's taken place, for anybody that has an IRA and that has a distribution coming out this year, they're saying, and I'm saying the IRS is saying that you can postpone that RMD for 2020 if you are the IRA holder. And this would only hold true for the IRA holders, not to the inherited IRA holders. So we're seeing some changes like that. We're also seeing some changes when it comes to the amount of money that has to come out of an inherited IRA. So if you had a parent or a loved one that passed away and left you as the beneficiary of an IRA prior to December 20th of last year, you could do what is called a stretch IRA, and that would allow you to take that money out in smaller increments over the course of the next, or over the course of your lifetime. And what they've done now is they've changed that to a 10-year rule. And it says, if something were to happen to you now your beneficiaries have 10 years to take it out. So they give you the option to take it out as a lump sum, or you can take it out over the course of that 10-year period. And I'm working with clients right now that are going through very similar situations. This is where it's really, really important, very important, that you have a good relationship with a good CPA that can give you sound tax advice to make sure whatever choice that you make regarding doing it as a lump sum, when to take money out, that you have somebody that you can go to and say, I need some expertise, advice with regards to taking these distributions. Sat down with somebody just here recently, just had this conversation and said, you need to talk to your CPA, and we would be happy to help coordinate with them and make sure that this money leaves the IRA so that it's not going to hurt you, because that was the last thing that the family meant whenever they left it to the clients. We're also looking at things like Roth conversions. Is that appropriate for clients? Now, David, I don't know if you have anything that you want to kind of add to those that may go along with that, and then after that we can jump into the Q&A.
Well, we want to make sure for my clients, when we have those situations, and I have several clients that are in that area of being retired and taking money out, and they've got inheritance, whatever, we try to make sure that we know the whole situation from beginning to end. And then, and you know yourself, we've had several phone calls between me and you over your clients and my clients, and what we need to do to make sure that we're covering all the bases.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that goes back to my firm motto, that we're going to do our best to keep you squared away.
Keep you squared away. Yeah.
We're going to do that the best we can.
Yeah.
And but the problem is that we see, and it goes back to what Chad was talking about, the attorneys and the deal. I don't know how many people we get every year. I'm going to guess it averages 5 to 7 people that do-it-yourself tax return programs. The same thing that those do-it-yourself wills. They do yourself tax returns. Well, they ask you questions, and if you answer those questions honestly, did you get income from this or that? I mean, for example, I had a client a couple of years ago that had done it herself, and it said, do you have farm income? She said yes, because she had CRP payments, which is rent. She clicked it. Well, when it did, it sent her to a Schedule F. There's an active farmer, which created self-employment tax. And then when she came to me, she was wondering why she owed $42,000 in taxes when they'd been getting refunds before. So we're a firm believer in the preemptive strike. Get it done first, and then, it's harder to put the pieces back together than it is to get them up front.
Yeah.
That's why the amended returns, we file a bunch of them, because, and what you were talking about, those IRAs, we've seen 2 cases of clients this year that they sent them 2 distributions in 19 because of some of those rule changes. They sent them 2 in 19, and then they paid tax on them, and there's no way to go back and change them. So, talk to Paul or Chad or me or somebody. You need information is utmost as far as I'm concerned. That's what.
Yeah. We all work in different fields, and this is where having colleagues and friends in other areas is very beneficial. So if I run across somebody that has a legal question, I can say, hey, I've got somebody you need to talk to. And same thing with tax-wise. I can say, hey, you can talk to David, ask him. I can pick up the phone at any time, and they do the same thing to me. Hey, Paul, I've got a question. And we use these gentlemen as resources to help us make sure that we're giving you the best advice we can. And I'm a firm believer of, I can work on my own car. I don't do it. My daddy taught me to feed another family. I specialize in what I do, and then I help somebody else feed their family. And I can't do it as good as these guys do. And I tell people that you need to know at least 4 or 5 people in your life. You need to have a good CPA. You need to have a good attorney. You need to have a good financial advisor. You need to have a good doctor. And you need to have a good minister or pastor or preacher in your life to help get you through some weird situations. It's kind of like what happened when we started this video. We just thought we had practiced, talked about this, and got it all set up, and then did it. and something else happened. It's kind of like 2020. It's kind of like the slide that just fell off and there really was no slide. This is why it's important to have these relationships with these men and ladies. I've got CPAs that are ladies as well, so I don't want to exclude anybody. The point is work with people that'll help you in unique situations, and it does not cost an arm and a leg to work with these guys or to work with me. The benefit is far outweighs the upfront cost, because not doing it can be far more devastating if you don't do it. So that being said, I'm going to look down here and see what questions we have here. I've got one from a good friend of mine. How hard is it for you to have your will updated, Chad?
That is a loaded question. But I will tell you this. Now, traditionally, and I don't know if they're used as often nowadays as they used to be, but there's something called a codicil. Okay. And a codicil basically is a modification, a change, or, to a will. Okay. You can take something away, you can add to it, whatever. I will tell you, I never tell people how hard or easy it is until I've had the opportunity to look at their will, at that document, because it may have been written 10 years ago, it may have been written 50 years ago. And there are certain things I'm looking for in that document. A lot of people get the idea too that just because a will is older, that maybe they need to update it. We had someone come in the office recently and they said, man, it's been 40 years since we did this will. And so I had them send it over. I sat down with them and I said, what's changed? And they said, well, nothing. And I said, there's nothing wrong with your will. It's still valid. If it's still telling, your executor your wishes upon your death, then why do you need to change it? Okay. Now, if you've had, changes in your financial circumstances or in your beneficiaries, the people that would receive under your will, then we might need to take a look at that. But without knowing those things, and I wouldn't know that until I had an opportunity to look over your will, I wouldn't be able to adequately answer your question for you. So, Mr. Smith, I would just ask you if you would like me to sit down at some point in time, give me a call at the office. I'd be more than glad to have you come in, take a look at it, and then advise you from there.
Yeah. Do we have another question here? How about the cost to update it? Lots of loaded questions here.
And I'm just going to kind of just trail on the last answer. The cost depends on the work that we do. Okay. I never tell somebody what it's going to cost until, again, I've had the opportunity to sit down and make an assessment of their actual needs. And then once I've done that, and I know it sounds like I'm being a lawyer, being technical and all that, but I don't want to tell somebody something and then if it ends up costing more, they think I've been disingenuous or dishonest with them. So I always tell them, let me take a look at your situation, and then from there I can determine how much time it's going to take that we're going to have to put into it to get you where you need to be. And then and we make that assessment, and then we always tell the potential client, hey, this is what we think it's going to be, and we never start work before we have an agreement or a contract. And if we can't come to that, that's okay.
Sure.
So.
A lot of good questions. Any other questions that we have out here? Okay. As it stands right now, we don't have any other questions. What we're going to do now is we're going to be doing this about every 2 weeks, and I've invited Chad and David to be a part of this as our first community conversation. We're going to be doing these more in the future. Would you do me a favor, if you would not mind? send us an email. Let us know what you liked about what you just saw, what you didn't like. Probably didn't like the technical difficulties, and that's fine. We're always looking for ways to improve what we're doing. We want to provide you with the very best level of service in everything that we do, but we also want to know what were some highlights that you liked about what we did. I'm so thankful that I had Melissa here to help us with this, because I would not have been able to put this on without her. You can't even see her over here on the side, but she is twisting buttons and making this thing happen, and would not have happened had she not have been here. We're very grateful to have her.
Absolutely.
So thankful to have Chad with us.
I've enjoyed it.
Same with David. We'll do this again. You want to see these guys, or if there's a specific topic that you would like to have us talk about, we'd be more than happy to do that. Now, in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing our long-term care workshop, and it's going to be in the daytime. So again, some of the things that we want to know from you is what time do you like to see these things? We're trying to make sure that these events and presentations are done in such a way so that we can record them and put them up on the website, but we also want to make sure that they're live as well, so it gives everybody the opportunity to ask questions. And so I think that's very, very important to do this. And at some point in time, we're going to be doing these events live like we did before. But right now, this gives us an opportunity to be able to cover, and I thought this was really neat. We're all the way from Lubbock to Houston, okay? Here we are in Weatherford, so I don't know all of the places that we're coming from. I know we got Wichita Falls here coming in, so we're all over the same place at the same time, and it's we can only do this through this kind of technology. So we're just so thankful to have all of you, and we're just appreciative to spend this time with you, and we look forward to doing this again here in a couple weeks. And the point is at some point we're going to be doing this even more often than probably once a week is my thing. So Melissa's going to turn this into our regular TV channel station, and they're just so thankful to have her. We appreciate all of y'all so much, and hope y'all have a good evening. I pray success over each and every one of you, and we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate y'all.
Good night.